Do your board meetings go a little something like this? If you can't tell, I'm looking, I'm reading, I'm nodding, but I probably really don't understand, right? Let's talk, let's chat a little bit. If typically your board meetings run like that, you present the financials, everyone nods, someone may have a question, it's probably random, about a line that really is not important, like, I don't know, supplies, and then nothing strategic is happening, then we should talk. Today we're gonna be talking about just how to talk about finances in a way that your board understands and to drive better decisions. And so if this is a problem that you have been having, then stay tuned. All right, there are so many times where I'll speak with an executive director and they're like, yeah, I gave my board the financials and that was it. They didn't have any questions. Or the other side of it is that they had 1,000,001 questions. It was about things that weren't as important. And then there's panic, right? And so typically the executive director is left kind of like, I don't know how to calm them. I also don't know maybe how to answer all of these questions. And that's why we're having this chat today, because financials aren't just reports, right? They're leadership tools and they should be guiding decision making. And if you have an active and engaged board, the idea is that they help govern the organization, right? So if you're just giving them financials and you're not getting any feedback, any support, they can't really assist, and it almost kind of feels null and void, and I don't want you to feel like that, right? So I'm going to go through a couple of things that will be helpful when you're presenting your financials, and I've jotted them down. So if you see me looking down, kind of like I was doing in the beginning, just know I got my handy dandy notebook with me today. The first thing we're going to start with is stop giving them reports. I know you're like, what? But we're talking about giving them financials. What I mean by that is stop just giving them all of these management reports and leaving them to their own devices. You have to frame the narrative. Typically, when I first start working with a client, I like to ask, like, who's on your board? What type of questions do they typically ask you? Because a lot of times, board members, you want to get straight to the point. You want to be very clear and specific. And so just giving all of these financials that you probably review on a monthly, I find is not helpful when you think about what you should be providing to the board. So you walk into your meeting, you're like, hey, here's the statement of activity, here's a statement of financial position, here's the statement of functional expenses, and they're like, okay, and what, right? That's not really strategic leadership, right? Instead, we want to change how you even present to the organization's board. I typically encourage presentations, visuals, and you want to walk them through. While yes, you want to give them the reports before or ahead of the meeting so that they can view them, when you are bringing it up to walk through during your meeting, you want to kind of frame the narrative around, here's what happened, or here's what changed and why, and here's what it means for us. Here's what I need from you based off of what you're seeing here. Do you, can you? You see what's happening there? Instead of just giving them the financials and just saying, okay, let me know if you have any questions, you're talking them through, you're walking them through it. And what you've decided is important to walk them through should be visible in those reports that you're giving them. And so again, being more strategic in what you're displaying. And so taking, right, that raw data that you get, so your regular statement of activity, statement of financial position, or your budget to actuals, but then framing it in a way that explains to them. So instead of just randomly giving them the budget to actuals, you give it to them accompanied by, right, visuals that show, I don't know, for these 5 rows that I've highlighted, we are severely over budget or approaching over budget. Blah, 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 blah. Here's why, here's what I need from you. Who knows, maybe you might have a question about that you need some support from them. So you frame it, right? The overall idea is framing it. You might be showing them the income, right, for the period, and you're saying, ooh, income is down, I don't know, 12%, even though we thought it would be X, right? But then you don't put the period there. You say it's down due to delayed grant reimbursements. We have reached out to yada, yada, yada. This is how this affects our cash flow. Based off of this, do we need to try to accelerate one of our giving campaigns? But giving more color and more context, I find, gets the brain moving, and they're like, oh, okay, now they have questions, now they have feedback, now they can think about, oh, I know someone that I work with, they sit on this board, they might be able to assist us with this grant. Or I know, you know what I mean? Like you start to get the things moving. Something's happening legally. They might be like, oh, okay, so that's what you need. I can refer a lawyer to the organization that would be helpful for this, right? So that's just an example. There's that. So that first piece is to stop just presenting reports and start framing narratives. Let's move into number 2. Lead with strategic questions, right? So these strategic questions are going to be different for every organization, but when you are thinking about putting together the board presentation, you want to start with some sort of a framing lens for you, because this helps you to determine what needs to be included. So you might be thinking of like, are we financially stable? So what's happening? You know, am I concerned about anything? Or am I overly like, we're doing really great? What is that? Because we should share it. Are we aligned with our strategic plan? Because if we are, it's good to report on that and report how, what's contributing, right, to this alignment. But also if we're off, that also is, there's room for discussion about that, because we might need assistance, have questions, but also because the board should know that, because they're responsible for governing the organization. And so that's something that is important for them to know. The third like framing question you want to be thinking about is, what are our risks? Because typically this is something rather that you want to bring to their attention. And so when you can start with those 3 leading questions, and that will kind of help with your presentation on what you need to put together, because those 3 questions will frame the numbers, right, that support that lens, whatever that lens is when you answer those questions, right? So boards are typically thinking in terms of governance, in terms of risk, and so you need to make sure that you're translating what's happening in the organization financially into that governance language, essentially. All right, so the third piece is teaching them how to read the story. Now, I know you might be thinking, I barely know, or, you know, this is just one more thing that you have to do. However, typically management is tasked, right, with making sure the board understands. And so when you think about it, you know, most board members are not accountants. You hear a lot about literacy, financial literacy on nonprofit boards. You know, there are certain topics or verbiage that they don't understand. So when you're speaking, you don't want to assume that they know what it means to be an accrual versus cash, or that they know what it means when you're like, yeah, we release those net assets, or when you're talking about functional allocation, or why something is sitting in deferred revenue. Because even if a term is understood, they may not understand the regulation behind it. You want to provide color, right, in that sense. And so what I find is that if you don't teach them the story, they kind of create their own. And typically, it's usually a story that one doesn't fit. It's usually kind of like worst case scenario or panic, and that's not something that you want to lean into either. And so when you are presenting those visuals and you're walking them through, you want to be very clear and specific about what it is that they're looking at. If they see a red number, that's stark, it's jarring, right? So one, should the number be in red? And if it is in red because you want to call attention to it, don't just bypass it. That should be a talking point for you, because you want to make sure that you're framing for them what that red number actually means. And is it something that they should be alarmed about? Or is it just something like, I just wanted y'all to know this. This is what that means, and this is what that means, and here's how we're handling that, right? This one is a little, I wouldn't even say controversial, honestly. I don't even want to hype it up, but we want to shift from just reporting on what's happened historically and also tie in forward planning, right? So you hear often that people kind of compare what is accounting versus finance. Accounting is looking back, finance is looking forward. When you're reporting to your board, you kind of want to marry the two. Boards don't really exist just to look at what happened in last month's bookkeeping, right? You as, you know, part of management and leadership, of course, you should be aware of those things. But when you're getting all of this data from your accountant or your accounting team, right, you have to then make sure that there is a way that you're putting that information together to determine what's going to happen in the future. Where are you steering the organization? So thinking about cash flow projections over the next 2 to 3 months, right? When you're reporting on your budget versus actuals, where do you see this going? You're trending this way right now. Where are you hoping to end, and how are you hoping to get there? What funding do you have in the pipeline? You know, oftentimes, you know, organizations are usually have a lot of balls in the air, right? So you campaigns you're managing over here or planning for these set of grants that you might be applying for, let them know, right? And what's the likelihood that you're going to actually receive some of these funding opportunities that you have in the pipeline? It also just shows that you're working hard to bring in funding into the organization so that things keep moving, right? So it's a really great number to report on. And I think in today's timing, scenario planning is important, right? I've talked about on this channel, from time to time about diversifying funding, not solely relying on, one funding source. And so knowing that things are happening in the world, I think it's important to consider, like, what does scenario planning look like if we lose a certain grant, something is multi-year, but maybe they didn't renew, or, there's a number of scenarios, and you want to think through what is most applicable to your organization. Where are you most at risk? And that being something that you discuss with your board. And now I kind of want to wrap this up with one piece that this is something that I actually got from a fellow colleague and friend of mine that we do in our financials with leadership, but now we also do it with the board, which is an executive summary. It sounds fancy, but it is just based off of whatever it is that we've decided is being reported on, is being shared. We write up a narrative, right? We write up a summary of all of these things, right? So if you did not look at any of the reports that we gave you, you could get a quick hit in that executive summary of what we've provided to you. And so I'm going to give you a couple of questions. I jotted down a couple of questions that you might want to consider when you're doing the executive summary for the board report. But what I found that organizations really like this, because sometimes they're like, unfortunately, you may not have the time to dig deep. Let's just say if you're reviewing your P&L or your balance sheet, and so you're like, what are the hot spots? Why did this number significantly jump from December to January, right? What is this sitting in uncapped, right? What's happening here, right? So we've determined based off of each of our clients what's important to include in the executive summary when we deliver monthly financials. You want to figure out what's most important when you're delivering your board reports, what you should be including in the executive summary. And I'm going to go through 5 questions or 5 points really quickly that you want to think through. So 1, what is your financial position? Are you stable? How's cash doing? Do you have reserve, need reserves, need to pull on reserves? What's happening there? Budget versus actuals. Are we off track? If we are, why? If not, great, right? Risks. Are we foreseeing any upcoming risks or any funding gaps? Put out an RFP for auditors. We got a few back, but the prices are super high. We need to discuss, like, what's happening there. Quick hot spot on what you need, right? Opportunities. We talked about the funding pipeline. What's in the pipeline? What's in the works? Let's talk about that. Let's give some positive news. And then lastly, decisions needed. What do you need from the board today? That should always, regardless of the other, this is just a light framework when you're building out that executive summary, because you might want to include different things, but you should always be including decisions needed. What do you need from the board today or the day of your meeting, right? What do you need? You always want to end with a decision or a direction. That helps to direct them, right? And so boards exist to decide, to govern, and so you want to make sure that you are, if nothing else, coming up with what it is that you need from them, what it is that you're trying to accomplish at the end of that meeting. If your board meetings kind of feel reactive or surface level, I hope that this was helpful. I hope that this gave you a way to look at how you put together your board presentations. If this was helpful, like it, subscribe, share with the fellow executive director that you know would find this helpful. This channel really exists to help you build financial clarity without the overwhelm. That's all. I want you guys to have the information, be armed with the information, and to go on without and be able to manage it without being overwhelmed. And so if this is helpful, like, subscribe, all of that good stuff, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.